7, 2, 9, 4, 5, 3, 1.
Hello. I know this isn't an Alan Wake or Remedy related video, but I am able to make videos on other things that I really want to talk about, so this is kind of like a break video, I guess. A lot of you have probably heard the game Pony Island. It's a small little game made by Daniel Mullins. It came out in 2016. And there's currently going to be a sequel. I think the game is just alright, but it got a fair amount of traction on YouTube. A lot of you have also probably heard of the game Inscription, also made by Mullins in 2021. But it seems very little people acknowledge the third game he made in between those two, in 2018, called The Hex. Now, I played Pony Island back when it came out, and I finally got around to playing Inscription for the first time, and I think Inscription is pretty good. In terms of all three games, it definitely has the best gameplay. I don't even like card games, in real life or in video games, but it made card mechanics simple and enjoyable and even fun for me. I really liked the art style, and I was pretty invested in the story and the mystery. Unfortunately, I think the ending of Inscription was underwhelming in my opinion, and that's when I realized that, to me, Daniel Mullins' best work is The Hex, an overshadowed little game that I played a while before Inscription. Now, this video is going to be massive spoilers about The Hex. There are also some connections to Inscription, but I will not be spoiling that game. The two games are set in the same universe, but they're their own separate stories. The basic plot of The Hex, in case you don't want to go in blind, is that at an inn in a forgotten corner of the video game universe, a murder is supposed to take place among the 6 video game characters. All the characters are from different franchises in the game, but they parody real game franchises, and the story is mainly delivered in flashbacks of each of them as you understand how they all arrived at the inn. You find out what the different games they are from, why those games failed, and discovered the real underlying story. If you're familiar with Mullins' other work, you know the game is chock full of satire on games as a whole, fourth wall breaking, and a very strange but, to me, amazing story. And I will say literally nothing else. If you want to stop right here and play the game, you should just stop right here and play the game. The game's relatively short and relatively cheap, and although I think it's a hidden gem and the best game from Daniel Mullins, you can buy a 3-game bundle of all 3 of his currently existing games, and I think that is worth it because this developer is pretty interesting and unique, and I definitely recommend supporting him. It's especially interesting because I expected nothing from The Hex. I went in knowing nothing. I didn't play Inscription at the time that I had first played The Hex. The art style looks a little bit like a Flash game, and I thought there'd be a bunch of like cringy, wannabe, hip video game jokes and references.
Undertale. That is a great game. It took me forever to beat Sans.
But that cannot be any further from what the game is. Anyway, without ado, I really want to fully dissect this game. Mainly the story, so again, massive spoiler warning, and I hope you enjoy. The game opens at a dark, forgotten corner of the video game universe during a raging storm at the Six Pine Inn. I like this title screen because as simple and basic as it seems, there are still cool details you can see, like a figure in the window. Starting the game, we briefly play as the bartender at the inn, getting a phone call from an unknown source that one of the inn's patrons is planning a murder. It doesn't say who will be the murderer or murdered. The bartender calls over Weasel Kid, saying he trusts him the most and to talk to all the characters and see if they are the murderer. This is the cliche part that allows us to get familiar with every character. There's Weasel Kid, a washed-up, past his prime jerk, Chandrel Stormblaze, a snarky, high-level sorceress, Chef Bryce, who insists he is a chef, and even the cook at the inn, even though he looks more like a fighter, Lazarus, a space marine, who knows Weasel Kid, but mysteriously says they are both not supposed to know each other, Rust, an old man who's the only character that isn't fully aware he is a video game character, or even aware of video games themselves, and a mysterious, who looks like he doesn't have a texture and is completely silent. Weasel Kid jokes about him being from a walking sim. There's also the bartender himself, but besides the fact that he runs and owns the inn and is paralyzed in a wheelchair, nothing else is known about him. Weasel Kid can also see a picture of someone he calls Mr. Shrewd at the bar. Once that's done, and Weasel Kid even makes a joke that it was a waste of time, he's sent to get a key from Chef Bryce's room. On Bryce's bed, you can find what looks like blood, and after getting the key, a red thumbs down appears where it wasn't just a second ago, and Weasel Kid falls as the floor breaks below him. He gets knocked out, and this is our first flashback sequence to Super Weasel Kid, known as the good old days. If you couldn't tell, Super Weasel Kid is a parody of platformers, namely Super Mario, obviously. Mr. Shrewd, who you can find a picture of in the bar, is Weasel Kid's friend and looks out for Weasel Kid by literally preventing him from dying. You can find a wise-looking cat, whose name is apparently Katarina, although that is not said in the game, who offers to tell a secret if we collect 50 coins. If we collect 50 coins and then go back to her, she's about to say some probably nonsensical secret, but refuses and instead tells us a real secret. That the game we're playing, Super Weasel Kid, was built on the ashes of another. Another as in another game, but what the fuck could that mean? By the way, this game uses a real Steam Friends usernames in certain points when it displays like joke Steam reviews, so I'm gonna have to either crop the video when those come up or censor them with like some images because I don't want my friends' Steam usernames to be in this video, just in case they don't want it. We learned through the very positive reviews that this is the first in the Weasel Kid franchise, and that developer of Super Weasel Kid is named Lionel, and he made the game when he was 12. Lionel will become a very important character.
What the fuck's up? This is me in editing. So I completely missed this on both of my playthroughs of this game, and also when I wrote my script, and also when I recorded my cam footage. But there is a fake Steam review from a character who will appear later, a minor character named Carla, and it's a completely like fake Steam account, and it's not a very important detail, but it's one that I thought was really cool, and I thought I would mention it.
Mr. Shrewd gives some foreshadowing in the form of advice, saying, "You're special, kid, but don't let it get to your head." Ironically, he isn't actually referring to Weasel Kid in that foreshadowing. At the end, we see a hooded figure saying he'll be replaced by mediocrity. The next game is Super Weasel Kid 2, Radical Road, known as the long-awaited sequel. There are now lives, and Mr. Shrewd can't help anymore, as well as there being a cooler, definitely not try-hard style. I mean, just listen to this music. You can even beat the shit out of knockoff Goombas instead of just jumping on them. The game got mixed reviews, as you could probably guess by the hooded figure saying the thing about mediocrity. You can find Katarina again, who offers you another secret for 50 coins. If you do so, she begins to tell a prophecy about someone named Reginald, who seeks vengeance. She alludes that if you find her again, she'll finish the prophecy. The hooded figure appears at the end again and asks if he still trusts him. It might sound like he's referring to Mr. Shrewd, but it becomes clearer later he's referring to his developer, Lionel. The message Mr. Shrewd gave about, like, you're special but don't let it get to your head, was also referring to Lionel, in case that isn't clear. The hooded figure also implies Weasel Kid cares what people think, despite what he tells himself. Again, I think that line also applies to Lionel. And then we get the last game in this flashback, Super Weasel Kid 09, Redux, just called The Fall. This is a remake of the original Weasel Kid. Mr. Shrewd is now replaced by this alcoholic-looking guy named Mr. Squirrel, and it's even implied he killed Mr. Shrewd. Of course, just like most remakes, it's a buggy mess, and reviews are super negative. You can find Katarina for a final time, who gives you a secret for free, which is good because I don't think we're gonna collect many coins. She finishes the prophecy by saying Root Beer Reggie, or Reginald, will find his vengeance and open the hex, and the prophecy even involves Weasel Kid. We learn through reviews that Lionel sold out the rights of Super Weasel Kid and the remake to a company called GameFuna. GameFuna isn't really that important in this story, But in case you're wondering, that is the same company from Inscription that created the Inscription card game and the Inscription video game in the game. It's also a metagame, obviously. Just a small fun fact that the two games are connected in that way. At the end of the game, Weasel Kid falls through a tunnel of negative reviews, and we see the hooded character place a rose on Mr. Shrewd's grave before Weasel Kid wakes up in the inn. You can find red text that says Super Weasel Kid equals lie. Remember Sarsaparilla. The first Super Weasel Kid equals lie is referring to what Katarina said about the game being built on the ashes of another, and that there's a deeper truth to Super Weasel Kid's creation. The word sarsaparilla is interesting. Sarsaparilla is a root that is commonly used in root beer, connected to that name that we got Root Beer Reggie. So it sounds like it's some sort of code word that is referring to Root Beer Reggie. You can also find a weird looking escape pod thing that Weasel Kid says someone named Jeremiah used. Weasel Kid returns the key and is obviously mad he almost died, but it turns out the key is just for the kitchen and for Bryce to make pie. We now play as Bryce. Bryce and Chandrell are shown to have some kind of history. Bryce also calls the question mark the random fighter option. In the kitchen, we could see a wanted poster of Lazarus, and Bryce sees a key in the pie tin. He makes the pie with the key inside, and the bartender says to deliver the pie to Chandrell's room. In her room, you can see an awfully sharp-looking sword, and a note that says something about a requested exorcism. After putting down the pie, rubble falls in Bryce's way, and he has to punch to clear it. This flashes back to an unknown part, called Before the First Fight. This is outside of any of the games in this universe. A secret agent from GameWorks is teaching Bryce to fight in a GameWorks building. Despite Bryce's dismay, you learn to punch high, middle, or low, and duck, block, or jump before the agent knocks you out. We could briefly see the developer of Super Weasel Kid, Lionel, has his full name, Lionel Snill, and he had bought the rights to Chef Bryce Cooking Quest, and Bryce is another character bought by Lionel. Cooking Quest is obviously a joke on those Cooking Mama games, and of course, Combat Arena X, which we are going into, is a spin on fighting games. The first fight is Bakto, who refuses to draw, and Bryce is called the worst character in the game by players. So there's a balance patch in the form of an upgrade choice we get to pick. During Alligator's fight, who is a very mouthy crocodile, I'm sure that's a joke on most people who play multiplayer games, we get another upgrade, and during Steambot Willie's fight, we get yet another upgrade, due to being Lionel's favorite character. The next fight is Chandrell. This explains how she and Bryce knew each other, because they met in this game. Chandrell gives the idea of winning so many fights, he'd be considered OP and gets banned, which is something he wants so he can return back to Cooking Mama. Chandrell is also trying to do this, and in the middle of the fight, Chandrell is removed due to being OP, and it's revealed Combat Arena X is in a beta, and that senior designer Carla Dosa, who will become an important name at the end, said that they didn't find her that OP, but Lionel Snill never liked her as a character. Bryce takes Chandrell's idea and begins to win a lot, and even gets a downgrade in a patch attempting to nerf him. Eventually, he fights the highest ranked fighter, Sato, who calls herself a performer. After defeating her, Bryce is removed from the game due to being OP and put back into Cooking Granny, called A New Beginning. The game is strangely similar to Combat Arena, having to jump high or low to catch pies and put them in one of 3 ovens. Once done, the GameWorks agent who trained Bryce appears, saying he was always better as a fighter and that Combat Arena X2 is coming out. GameFuna is now handling development and they own the rights to Chef Bryce, so he's being reassigned. Bryce refuses and attempts to hit the agent. Bryce hits Granny, or possibly kills her, it's never made quite clear. The agent says Bryce won't be allowed in any game after hitting an innocent NPC, who also does this. KO. Thanks, asshole. Bryce is pulled from the Combat Arena lineup. Cooking Granny is considered nostalgic, implying that it ended. Combat Arena moves on to an 8th game, and eventually, Bryce sees a job flyer for a cook at the inn, put up by the hooded figure. Back in the inn, Bryce tells the bartender he should fix up the inn, and the bartender almost says Jeremiah before saying repairman. There's also a key lime joke because Bryce made the pie with the key in it, but it isn't key lime, get it? The bartender sends Chandrell to her room, and now we play her. Chandrell doesn't know what happened to Bryce after he was removed from the combat arena. There's a joke about leveling up manners, and she calls the question mark the doppelganger mini-boss. She also has some history with Lazarus. Lazarus says Chandrell is at the inn to erase her consequences, but Lazarus can't erase his. She finds the key that she said she requested, and a headlamp appears in her room with the text, "Dark down there," meaning you have to go to the cellar. If you look at the same escape pod Weasel Kid looked at, Chandrell says she saw a few of those somewhere in the GameWorks. We do a simple puzzle to activate an operating table that was set up by the hooded figure. Using this machine, this flashes back to Secrets of Legendaria on release day. In the game, she's awoken by Moji, this annoying-ass thing, who says the Dark Lord Valimir took over and Chandrell is supposed to have amnesia, but she doesn't. Moji tries to teach her how to fight, but after using a dark tome that shows Valimir's sigil, we fucking kill Moji, and the game is revealed to be live streaming. The chat does say things like "Goodnight, sweet prince" every single time you complete a battle, and also try to tell you which upgrade to pick every time you level. We encounter Valimir, and it reveals the two have met previously and struck a deal. If Chandrell finds the 3 green orbs in the game, she will give them to Valimir instead of the Great Sage that she's supposed to give. So Valimir will end up destroying the game and prevent them from getting a sequel. G, a turn-based RPG where you have to collect magical items that are spread all over different places and have different colors. I wonder what this is parried. Moji's son is also waiting for his dad to come back. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. We see a statue of ourselves, hailed as a great sorceress of old who sealed away Valimir, and it's a prophecy that will seal him away again. You can find Mr. Squirrel running an item shop, and there's a joke about not even needing the items. And you can find a janitor in the sacred temple, where the orbs are supposed to go, who wants to try to get into a different game. Going to the first orb, Chandrell runs into a knight, Lazarus. Again, the two appear to have met before, but they know each other through this game. Lazarus suggests taking a shortcut to get the orb to avoid grinding these enemies, and you should take that, but dumbass me killed all of these enemies because I thought there'd be some secret or like an achievement or something, and there isn't. There was just nothing. You defeat a dragon, get the first orb. Lazarus finds out about Chandrell's and Valimir's deal and agrees to it, and then we head north to the next orb. The orb is held by a sphinx, and we need 36 onks, but Lazarus suggests we use a bug dunk, and I know better than half an hour of dumbass grinding than to try to do things the right way, so we go do that. Blocking the bugged onk is a puzzle that a chat user spoils for us, and once we meet the sphinx, the battle's actually a bunch of riddles. Some of which are real riddles, and some others are total bullshit. For the last few riddles, the same chat user who spoiled the previous puzzle spoils the riddles and then gets banned. There's also a sponsored question. Buy root beer. No coincidence, there it is again. Once we get the orb, we find the last orb to the east was eaten by a kraken, and a captain offers to help us out. On the ship, we fight some weird turtle things before finding out that our captain was an imposter captain, revealed to be the GameWorks agent. He wants to kill Chandrell for not complying with being in combat arena or with being in Secrets of Legendaria. And also he steered the ship into fog, so the live viewers can't see what's happening, which is kind of dumb, because that's not how it works, but they fight and it turns into an actual fist fight before the fog begins to clear, and we run into the Kraken so the agent escapes. We find the hooded figure who steered the ship into the Kraken, and they tell Chandrell and Lazarus about the inn. Completing the deal with Valimir, the game is destroyed. The livestream is a disaster, and the game's ratings tank due to the bad ending, and also a pretty bad stream. Meeting with the GameWorks agent, whose actual name is revealed to be Irving, he says Secrets of Legendaria is cancelled. Lazarus shows regret doing what they did, but Chandrell doesn't, and Lazarus gets reassigned to Vicious Galaxy. But Chandrell isn't reassigned to anything. Her punishment is that Valimir can now possess Chandrell. Back in the inn, we now see that the exorcism Chandrell was referring to was getting Valimir out of her, and it was a success. Okay, so now I think is a good time for a quick recap on everything that's happened and to make some plot connections because I gave you a lot of info and we're like roughly halfway through the game. The Hex is set in a fictional game universe where all the game characters created have some sort of sentience. There's also the game works, which is sort of like the video game universe government, which manages all the characters and all the games all the characters are in. In a dark, forgotten part of this universe sits the Six Pint Inn, where 6 outcasted player characters currently are. During a storm, the strange old paralyzed bartender who owns the inn learns that a murder is supposed to happen, but doesn't know who is supposed to murder or be murdered. Meeting characters, a Weasel Kid, a washed-up platformer asshole who's kind of like BoJack Horseman, Chandrell, a sorceress from a fighting game, Chef Bryce, who's a chef but is forced to be a fighter, Lazarus, a knight forced to be a space marine and has some strange connections to Weasel Kid and Chandrell, and Rust, an unaware, crazy-sounding old man apocalypse game survivor. Also a silent question mark, who no character knows anything about. Trying to get a key, Weasel Kid sees blood in Bryce's bed and takes a fall. We learn Weasel Kid was from a well-received game developed by a promising 12-year-old developer, Lionel Snill. However, his games turn from good to mediocre to a horrible glitchy remake. Optionally, you can also learn about how Super Weasel Kid was made from some previous game that's now forgotten, and that somebody named Root Beer Reggie seeks some sort of vengeance and will involve Weasel Kid. At the end, we learn about an important word, sarsaparilla, which is connected to root beer, and that's someone named Jeremiah who got to the bar using some strange escape pod from the GameWorks. Returning the key, Chef Bryce goes to make pie, can find that Lazarus is wanted but doesn't know why, and brings the pie to Chandrell's room, who has requested an exorcism from the inn. Bryce was forced to learn how to fight for Combat Arena by a GameWorks agent named Irving because Lionel Snill bought the rights to him, but eventually learns he can win so many fights to become OP and get removed from the game so he could go back to his actual game. Chandrell is also originally from Combat Arena, but gets removed due to being OP. Bryce encounters a mysterious figure named Sato, but after defeating her, is removed and put back into Cooking Granny. Irving finds Bryce and says he's being put back into Combat Arena officially, but trying to fight him, accidentally hits Granny. Now banned from any game, Combat Arena moves on without him, while Bryce eventually finds the inn. Back at the inn, the bartender almost mentions Jeremiah, before Chandrell finds the key in her pie, and uses it to complete her exorcism of Valimir, revealing that after she was removed from Combat Arena, she was made the main character in an RPG, which she, Lazarus, and Valimir intentionally destroy to get out. This gets live-streamed, the game's a failure, however this backfires because a regretful Lazarus is thrown into another game, while Valimir is put inside Chandrell's head. Also, for all of our character stories, a mysterious hooded figure has appeared, saying foreboding things and pointing all the characters to the end, as if it's some sort of plan. Okay, now that we're hopefully reminded on a few things, I want to point out a couple details you may have missed. If you've been paying enough attention, you could put together most of the mystery in this game using the given clues, but I'm not going to give any of that away just yet. The only other thing I want to emphasize is remember all of these things going forward. The hooded figure has appeared for every character so far, and somehow has influenced them finding the inn. The name Jeremiah keeps coming up, the question mark guy, Sato the strange character Bryce fought, who Lionel Snill is, and the bartender. Yes, it may not seem like it, but the bartender plays a massive role. Okay, back to where we were. Returning to the bar, Chandrell mentions how she has one more thing she needs to do, and that Bryce is here for something too. Now we play as Rust. It's also worth mentioning that pretty much every character suspects either Rust or the question mark guy to be the possible murderer. Rust is pointed to his room and upon arriving, sees what may or may not be hallucinations from his past. Also, Katarina is here, but she doesn't really say anything important. Rust finds the hooded figure in a room with a mysterious object on the table. The hooded figure greets Rust as if they've met before and says they have catching up to do. This flashes back to Rust's game, Wasteworld, with the phrase unfinished business. Rust and his mutant son, Rocky, are fighting raiders to get to a cache that supposedly has a lifetime of supplies. The dog mechanic from Secrets of Legendaria is also an upgrade shopkeeper because Secrets of Legendaria failed, and she was moved here. At the start of the fight in front of the cache, an infinite movement sheet is enabled, as well as Mine Foot. The characters even acknowledge the mines. These cheats are the main gameplay mechanic for this section. You couldn't tell every character section has like a different main mechanic for that section. As you go, you unlock a few more cheats, but you can only ever have 2 enabled at once, except you can switch the 2 enabled at any time during the fight. So the main puzzle is switching cheats at the right time to win fights you otherwise could not win. Getting to the cache, the word is Sarsaparilla, told you to keep that word in mind, but the entire cache is missing, and all they find is the hooded figure, telling them the developer, Lionel Snill, abandoned the game in early access because the game got leaked. With the leak, modders going crazy modding the game, and now mods are the only thing keeping the game alive before they get shut down by a cease and desist. Rust is told to survive until they get shut down. The next section is Wasteworld, but incomplete. Get it? Because the earlier screen said unfinished business, and it literally meant like the game was unfinished. It's very, very big clever. The first raiders that we encounter again talk as if they are common internet users before they get killed by aliens, and now aliens become the main thing we fight. We also get an infinite damage glitch, which again you'll need to use to win. Rust thinks the hooded figure will know more about what's going on and wants to find him. While fighting more aliens, an alien probe attaches to Rust, but allows Rocky to get a permanent upgrade between Brutality, which lets Rocky punch multiple times, or Endurance, which lets him move multiple times. We then get into the middle of a battle with Dust Bowl Danny, a character Rust can mention in passing dialogue, and he says we are in the Boss Rush mod. We kill Danny and this annoying worm thing before we encounter Sato, the strange fighter from Combat Arena, who seemed fairly suspicious. Sato targets only Rocky, and once he dies, he's not able to be brought back, and Rust is forced to start a mod of Sato's, Hardcore, and we're back at the beginning, getting the cache, but without Rocky, and cheats aren't allowed. Rust talks to himself and responds like he is Rocky, showing he's already losing his mind to get to the state he's in at the bar. When reaching the cache again, he finds the hooded figure who tells him the mods are shutting down because Lionel Snill put out a cease and desist. Rust hears about his creation, the game works, and is offered a place at the inn. But shoots the hooded character, and we're warned that mods are going to get weird. Things do indeed get pretty trippy, with a Super Weasel Kid mod fighting on top of the map and fighting as a raider. I mean, if it wanted to be like really accurate about the state of mods, it would just be a bunch of weird porn, but this is good too. Sato makes Rust hallucinate Rocky briefly before we take control of Sato in the final turn to shoot Rust, and Rust arrives at the inn because he lost Rocky and his game shut down. Back at the inn, the hooded character finally reveals himself, saying he couldn't help Rocky, but he can help Rust, and he's communicating with the bartender. There's a knock at the door, and the bartender sends Lazarus to answer. If you talk to Chandrell and the bartender as Lazarus, they both seem to know who's knocking, because it's Irving, and he's looking for Lazarus, but we don't know why. The bartender sends Lazarus to the kitchen to hide, and we find a control room with a bunch of cameras and keys, and an armory with a bunch of weapons from the other games, and pick up a gun. Lazarus walks out, and despite Irving's threats, shoots him. We freeze and go to Vicious Galaxy 2. That small phrase, or something like it, is very important for a future reveal. So Lazarus, Moji's son. Moji was the guy that Chandrell fucking murdered in the tutorial of her game. Moji's son Jr., the mysterious character, and another character we've seen, Jay, the janitor also from Secrets of Legendaria, are breaking in somewhere to steal a vague artifact. They fight hordes of enemies, and Lazarus helps Jay with the payload because Jay is too scared to fight. Junior also almost says something before he corrects himself, and and says aliens. When Lazarus has to help Junior, we can find a strange skeleton. Dialogue between Lazarus and Junior reveals the mysterious character who recently just revealed themselves is Jeremiah. We also find surrendering enemies. We either shoot them ourselves or refuse and Junior shoots them. Laz begins to have second thoughts, and Jay admits he was hiding and didn't shoot anybody, resulting in Junior shooting him. The two confront someone who turns out to be Irving. Breaking the fourth wall, Irving says the characters tricked us, the player, into attacking the GameWorks and killing innocent game characters. That's why everything seemed off, like the message at the beginning, why Junior almost said aliens, why Jay didn't want to fight the skeleton. Weasel Kid is shown to be their inside man, and we briefly play him, finding 3 possible areas to set off the bomb. He's confused about all of them, and it doesn't matter which one you pick. The bomb goes off when the group confronts Irving. And Junior is killed, while Jeremiah gets away and Lazarus falls to the R&D department. We get some neat but unfortunately short puzzles where we have to swap between top-down and side-scrolling, and even references to previous games like Secrets of Legendaria. Lazarus reunites with Jeremiah, who reveals they need to free someone from the cells for detained NPCs to get the artifact. The NPC freed is revealed to be Sado, who immediately wreaks havoc. We flash back to a previous conversation between Lazarus and Jay. He mentions someone told him about the inn, and going to the inn, he meets Weasel Kid and Jeremiah. Jeremiah knows they both want payback to the GameWorks because of how they were handled when their own games were shut down, and tells them about attacking the GameWorks and stealing the artifact, which is supposed to open some kind of portal. Lazarus finds Sado with the artifact, who forces Lazarus to fight a monster, a PUBG reference, which is as interesting as actual PUBG, and then Sado herself. Lazarus wins and gets the artifact. Jeremiah uses an escape pod, explaining the escape pod in the cellar, and Lazarus is seen talking to someone, a real, actual-looking person, about the artifact being taken before Lazarus escapes. Back in the inn, Irving dies from getting shot, and the bartender turns to us, saying that that was the murder the game was originally about, and asks if we are satisfied with that as an ending. If we pick yes, the game literally just ends. If we pick no, we continue. The bartender states we have a key role, but before that, wants to talk to Question Mark. He tells Question Mark to go to his personal cabin right outside the inn, and that only he and us can complete the story. In the cabin, Question Mark finds a computer and a drawing of a hex before we begin our final game, Walk, called the Magnum Opus. And yes, it is literally a walking simulator, which Weasel Kid predicted all the way back at the beginning if you talk to Question Mark. Walk is narrated by Lionel Snill, the only actual voice role in the game, and the voice actor does really good.
This is Lionel Snill. If you're hearing this, it's because you turned on the developer commentary for my latest game, my magnum opus really, called Walk.
We get a model of his childhood bedroom. He has a cooking granny poster, a pet shrew, who we called Mr. Shrewd, and a pet weasel, who we calls Weasel Kid.
One of my favorite games at that age was Cooking Granny. I thought Chef Bryce was the coolest. You know how that turned out.
The computer that was in the bartender's cabin is also the same computer here.
My original plan for Walk was to have it be an almost non-interactive experience, just allow the player to explore and contemplate. I did some market research though, and well, that kind of game was falling out of vogue. Not much money in it, so I jammed in some real gameplay.
This was the creation of the first Weasel Kid game. The gameplay of this section are some light puzzles where you code Lionel's own game, and Lionel says he coded using GameWorks' system and had Irving as an AI assistant. As the first Weasel Kid game was a hit, Lionel would keep trying to make other projects, but would compare them to Weasel Kid. Eventually, he made Super Weasel Kid: Radical Road.
The success of Super Weasel Kid paralyzed me. I tried starting a few different games, but I kept comparing them to my big hit. What would people think if I put out something that was worse? That I had just gotten lucky the first time? That I'm a one-trick pony? Eventually, I settled on making a sequel. Super Weasel Kid: Radical Road. Mr. Shrewd was getting older, both in Radical Road and real life. The older I got, though, the less I really cared.
The mediocre reviews made Lionel panic. He shelved Weasel Kid forever. His pet Shrew died and his weasel would escape, both being thematic parallels to the actual game characters, since Mr. Shrewd literally died and Weasel Kid would escape. Lionel admits he eventually sold Super Weasel Kid to the highest bidder, that being GameFuna, but would regret this when he saw the poor remake.
When I saw what they did with Super Weasel Kid, I felt a little part of myself die. But I was 18 years old and loaded. It was actually one of the best years of my life.
Now 18 and being very well off with money from the cell, he moved out and created an office. He wanted to make a fighting game called Combat Arena, one of the most popular fighting game franchises. He hires his childhood friend Carla to his office.
I hired my childhood friend Carla to work at my new studio. She was halfway through a degree in computer science, but I offered her a huge salary. Hard to say no to that.
Which is a name that was mentioned once during the Combat Arena section. Lionel would buy the rights to his favorite cooking granny character, Chef Bryce, with the help of Irving. He created Chandrell while Carlo would create Sato, both for Combat Arena. But Lionel says ever since Sato was made, he would get weird bugs in his games, and was creeped out by her. Being in charge, Lionel begins to show a lot of arrogance, frustrated at the constant complaints from gamers for Combat Arena.
I have to admit, though, coding the punches and kicks was everything I had hoped it would be. I'd sit in my office for hours just watching these characters go to town on each other. Sometimes they'd look like they could actually feel it.
By the time it was done, Lionel hated the game and thought it was perfect and sold the franchise off to GameFuna.
I hated it by the end, but since my fingers had touched it, it turned to gold. I still had my contract with GameFuna, so I sold the franchise for another boatload of cash.
He used the ton of money to get a bigger and better team, to make a supposedly bigger and better game, Secrets of Legendaria. He hired a popular streamer to play the game on launch.
Yeah, you like that switch mechanic? Pretty cool, huh? Still got it.
But as we know, it was a disaster, and Lionel thought Carla sabotaged the game. The game bombed in sales, so Lionel took severance money and went south, starting work on Wasteworld, which he thought would be his comeback.
I would wake up, sit in front of my computer, and just stare at the screen with my hands beside the keyboard. After about an hour of that, I'd blow off the rest of the day playing some online game.
He would read harsh articles on himself, and decided to abandon Wasteworld. Ironically, not finishing this part of Walk either. He did believe modders were ruining and mocking his game that he didn't even finish, and shut them down.
The final straw was those idiotic modders. They took my half-finished game and made a goddamn mockery of it. Aliens in a post-apocalyptic Wild West. It made no sense. If I couldn't finish the game myself, I sure as hell wasn't going to let them do it for me. Getting the legal documents drawn up to take on those modders really fired me up. It was just what I needed to bring those lowlives to task. Those gormless basement dwellers were going to pay wherever attempt.
Jeremiah appears, telling us we can change things when we see a door of light. We don't enter it, walk back, and look right, before skipping us into the Vicious Galaxy section. Lionel mentions a breach in GameWorks where a lot of data was lost, which was when Lazarus and his team attacked them. After this, Irving tells Lionel he may be in danger. After we beat the last puzzle, half-heartedly inspired and congratulated by Lionel.
You know, I had to lower the difficulty of that puzzle like 10 times before the average player could solve it. But great job, you figured it out. You win.
He thinks it would win Game of the Year, and tells us to end the game by walking through the white door. If we do that, we get an error in Lionel's narration.
The end. Thanks for playing, I guess. At this point, you just have to walk toward the white door frame and the credits roll. And, hey, I'm glad you turned on the developer commentary. I hope my story was as much an inspiration to you as it is to me. This is Lionel Snill, signing off. Did you get all that? Alright, good. Let's get out of here.
Then in-game credits, and the game ends. But if we remember, Jeremiah told us, go back from the white door and enter a glitched path. We're told Lionel lied to us, and Super Weasel Kid was not his first game.
Super Weasel Kid was not my first game. That was my count C first game.
Just like the prophecy Katarina said, his first game was Root Beer Reggie, an incredibly simple game where Root Beer Reggie, also known as the bartender, would serve root beer to NPCs that we have seen across the games, while Jeremiah was his janitor. It was just this like little mini-game kind of game. We get plenty of hints toward this, but likely didn't put it together. The fact that Sarsaparilla, a word related to root beer, was a key phrase, Katarina's prophecy mentioning that Super Weasel Kid was built on the ashes of another, and mentioning Reggie by name. Hell, even the fact that characters never actually reference that Jeremiah or Reggie are in a game because they didn't know about Root Beer Reggie. When Lionel was making Super Weasel Kid, Irving entered Reggie's game and shut it down, saying he can't have an embarrassing game like this while Super Weasel Kid is coming out. Reggie refused to leave, so in what is probably the most brutal scene I have ever seen in 2D, Irving breaks Reggie's legs, hence why he's in a wheelchair at the inn. Back at the inn, all the characters are surrounding the artifact, which is the hex, and Reggie tells us to do the same, revealing they always needed a player, and we were basically used. Once we do that, a portal is created, and shows a man, the only man in the game, Lionel Snill. A digital hand reaches through, and they choke him to death, officially ending the game. In an end credit scene, Sato appears behind Lionel's dead body. Although we've beaten the game, there's actually plenty to explore and tiny little secrets, and I even got all the Steam achievements because I just love this game that much. I covered some of the side stuff that you can find in my synopsis. I'd like to go over more of what I did after officially beating the game. In every single game from each of the main characters, you can actually intentionally crash the game, causing an achievement for a crash in that part of the game, and also actually crashing the game on you. In Super Weasel Kid 09, you can crash the game by finding a mountain and rubbing it with your mouse. In Combat Arena, at any time, you can enter the Konami code, which crashes the game. In Secrets of Legendaria, you can find a hidden doppelganger mini-boss, which Chandrell even references if you talk to the question mark. If you use the amulet, the boss drops on a missing node you can find, which is an obvious Pokemon reference. You can crash the game. If you track through and fix Mr. Shrewd glasses, which takes several actions and several parts of the game to do, you can learn his real sad fate. Mr. Shrewd and Mr. Squirrel were lovers, and although it looks like Mr. Squirrel killed him, he didn't. Mr. Shrewd just got old, which is actually really sad. You can crash Waste World at the end if you clone Sato and then kill her. If you ensure the headlamp stays inside the inn and get Rust's hammer, you can free Valimir from the glass case. Once you do, he wrecks the inn and then farts and rolls the credits. And technically this counts as a secret ending. In Walk, you can find 4 secret tarot cards, which are all figures across the whole game, and then find a hidden Katarina for a reading. All of the cards just allude to the other themes and things that I've mentioned already. If you find a secret 5th card, Lionel mentions his plan for writing a book. You can also crash walk by being able to enter 666 in the Waste World part of it. Throughout all of the hex, there are 3 vending machines in the end, which all take different amounts of coins. All the coins are hidden throughout the end and only the end. Putting in all the coins in every vending machine gives more clues and foreshadowing to the truth of who Reggie and Jeremiah are. You'd think that is all the lore I have to say, but there is actually more. Follow fucking super hidden clues that I did not care to follow through myself. In this sort of ARG, you can get a short chat between Lionel and Carla. Lionel asks if Carla can just hide some files in Carla's fishing game before Carla blocks him. This is the same Carla mentioned in Walk by Lionel. A fishing game? On Steam, you can find a free game called Beneath the Surface by Carla51. She has no other games, and in the game's description, Carla mentions this game being your first indie venture after working for bigger studios. Most of the game just seems like a quirky little idle fishing game. If you max upgrade everything, you're able to reel the fishing line down far enough for it to just say question mark, and then reel it back up. It will reel the whole screen up, saying thanks for playing. But at any time of playing, if you type lionel.exe using the chat between Lionel and Carla as a clue, an old prototype build of the Vicious Galaxy section of Walk plays with Lionel's narration. Here he admits to Super Weasel Kid not being his first game and having Irving delete the files of Root Beer Reggie. He also believes his game characters are alive and know about Lionel, so he apologizes to Reggie, saying he misses him.
I've seen some things lately that made me think. What if the characters that I've created live somehow? Like, in some way, they know who I am. It's probably nonsense, just some trolls on the GameWorks forums getting the better of me. But in the case that the stories they tell are true, and the really unlikely case, I think I would owe one of my characters an apology. No one else knows this, but Super Weasel Kid was not my first game. I actually made this really janky root beer game when I was even younger. The only thing I liked about it was the main character, Root Beer Reggie. I made him look like a younger version of my grandpa. Then, after my grandpa passed, I still had Reggie. I don't know what I was thinking, but when Super Weasel Kid was almost done, I figured that I'd ought to delete the old root beer game. I guess I thought it looked better if my very first game was something great, like I was some kind of prodigy. Irving handled deleting the files. I couldn't bear doing it myself. He told me that Reggie would be exported to a different game, but I never saw him again. Well, if you're out there somewhere, Reggie, I still miss you. And I'm sorry.
Before the game crashes and Sato.exe is installed, and we get this yummy jump scare. And that is a full description of the story and all of the lore in the world of the Hex. In short, I truly loved this game. I feel like there are very little games that accurately depict the gaming industry and the state of some games and players. Walking into this game, again, I thought it would be like cringe fucking memes and shit about like Fortnite or something. And I'm genuinely so surprised that and glad that it wasn't that and actually had something to say about games, like the medium as a whole. But on top of that, it has a really good story. I mean, I just spent like an hour telling you about it. The mystery was intriguing, the characters are all diverse and unique, and all of the plot points add up to something that makes it wonderful and funny and dark and interesting. And to top that off, I think the game genuinely has a message, something to really say, one I don't really see a lot. As an aspiring filmmaker, it becomes more and more important to me to always respect what you make, whether it be art in some form or just a thing you made, like this video. Respect it, and respect the supporters you have, whether it's an audience, consumers, or just family and friends who like what you made. Respect them, because if you hate what you've made, and you look down on who likes it, it'll only come back to kill you. Thanks for watching.